I was living in my father's house on Willow Road, a narrow street with old trees on both sides. The house was gray, with a low roof and a small kitchen that always smelled like coffee. We were in Oxford, a calm city in England, and most days felt the same. I slept in the upstairs room with one window facing the road, trying to save every pound I earned from small jobs. My sister Elaine lived there too with her husband Daniel and their children, Leo and Anna. One afternoon, Elaine walked into the living room holding her phone and smiling like she already had an answer. "I'm going to Miami for a week," she said. "You'll watch the kids."
She didn't ask.
She told me. I looked at the floor and felt my chest tighten. I had plans. I had an interview in London and only 80 pounds left. I told her I couldn't do it. I said it calmly, but my voice still shook. Elaine's smile disappeared. That night, my father Thomas told me I had to leave the house by morning. He said family comes first. I packed my bag in silence, not knowing that saying no would change everything. I left the house before the sun came up. The street was quiet, and the gray house on Willow Road looked smaller than it ever had. I didn't look back. I was afraid if I did, I would stay. I carried one bag with clothes, my old phone, and a notebook where I wrote my thoughts when I couldn't sleep. I had 80 pounds in my pocket, folded and counted too many times. I walked to the bus station in Oxford instead of taking a taxi. I needed to save every pound. The air was cold, and my hands shook, but I told myself this was freedom. I bought a ticket to Birmingham, thinking I could stay with a friend for a few days and figure things out. I sat on a metal bench and watched people rush past me, all of them looking like they belonged somewhere. While I waited, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Elaine. It reminded me of how easy it was for her to pretend I didn't exist. The message was short and cold. She wrote that I had made my choice and that I would regret it. I didn't reply. I turned my phone off and slipped it back into my bag. I stood up when my bus was called. That was when everything changed. A man touched my shoulder and said my name. I turned around and saw two police officers standing behind me. One was a woman with tired eyes, and the other was a tall man holding a small notebook. People nearby slowed down, pretending not to stare. They asked me to come with them. My heart started beating so fast, I thought I might faint. I kept asking what this was about, but they only said there had been a complaint filed against me. My legs felt weak as they walked me into a small office inside the bus station. They sat me down and told me my sister had sued me. They said she claimed I had stolen $2 billion from a private fund connected to her business. For a moment, I didn't understand the words. $2 billion sounded like something from a movie, not my life. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was impossible. I told them the truth. I told them I had no access to her money. I told them I had been sleeping in a guest room with a broken lamp and counting pounds just to eat. I showed them my bank account. It barely had anything in it. The woman officer looked at the screen and frowned. The man wrote notes, but said nothing. They asked me questions for hours. Where had I worked?
Who did I know?
Had I ever signed any papers for Elaine? I answered everything. My throat hurt from talking, and my eyes burned from holding back tears. I kept thinking about my father and how easily he believed her. I wondered if he was eating breakfast in that house while I sat in a small room being accused of stealing money I couldn't even imagine. At some point, they let me step outside to get air. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and hugged my bag. I felt small and stupid for thinking I could just leave and start over. Elaine had followed me even here. The officers finally came back and said there was no proof. They said the case was strange and full of gaps. They let me go, but they warned me that this might not be over. I walked out of the bus station feeling like everyone could see what had just happened to me. I didn't get on the bus. I couldn't. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I walked to a nearby cafe and spent £5 on tea I barely drank. I sat there for hours, watching the door, afraid the police would come back. That night, I slept on a bench near the station. using my bag as a pillow. The cold went through my coat, and every sound woke me up. I kept thinking about how fast my life had fallen apart. All because I said no. All because my sister decided I was easier to blame than to tell the truth. By morning, I understood something clearly. Elaine wasn't done with me, and if I stayed quiet, she would keep using my silence against me. I didn't plan to go to the birthday party. I told myself that showing up would only reopen wounds that were already raw. But the invitation sat in my mind like a stone I couldn't put down. It was Ethan's birthday, and no matter what had happened between the adults, he was still a child who liked chocolate cake and loud music. I decided I would go for him, not for anyone else. The party was held at a rented house on Riverside Drive, a wide place with a long lawn and a fence covered in bright balloons. It stood near the edge of Cambridge, close enough to the river that you could smell the water in the air. I arrived early, wearing a simple blue dress I bought with my last clean pounds. I carried a small gift I paid for with dollars I had saved from selling old books. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. Children ran across the grass, shouting and laughing. Music played from a speaker on the porch. For a moment, everything looked normal, almost peaceful. I stood near the gate and watched, wondering how a place could look so happy while hiding so many lies. Then I saw my sister. Elaine was standing near the table with the cake, smiling and talking like nothing had ever happened. She looked confident, calm, and perfectly in control. When her eyes met mine, her smile vanished. She froze in place, like her body had forgotten how to move. The sound around us seemed to fade, and for a second, it felt like we were the only two people there. Before I could say anything, my father appeared beside me. His hand closed tightly around my arm. His grip wasn't painful, but it was firm enough to stop me from stepping forward. "Please," he whispered, his voice shaking just a little. "Not here." I looked at him and saw fear in his eyes. Not fear for me, but fear of what the truth might do to the picture he wanted to keep. I gently pulled my arm back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shout. I simply walked toward the table. Elaine's children were gathered around the cake, waiting for the candles to be lit. Adults stood nearby holding cups and plates, smiling and talking. I felt all their eyes on me, even if they pretended not to look. I placed the gift down and waited until the singing stopped. "I won't make a scene," I said calmly, "but I won't stay quiet anymore." Elaine swallowed hard. She tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. She told everyone this wasn't the time. She said we could talk later. She said I was being dramatic. I shook my head. "You already chose the time," I said. "You chose it when you called the police on me. You chose it when you told people I stole $2 billion. The air felt heavy. Conversation stopped. Someone turned off the music. I spoke slowly, using easy words, because I wanted everyone to understand. I told them about the bus station. I told them about the hours in that small room. I told them how my sister's claim had no proof, and how my life had been torn apart anyway. I didn't cry. I didn't insult her. I just told the truth. Elaine's husband, Daniel, stepped closer. His face was pale. He told me I was lying. He said I was trying to ruin the party. His voice was loud, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. So I told him about the emails. I said I found them by accident on the family computer weeks before Elaine's trip. Messages about moving money between accounts. Messages about hiding numbers, about blaming someone else if things went wrong. I said I saved copies because something felt wrong. I didn't even know what the amounts meant at first, but now I did. $2 billion. The word alone made people gasp. Elaine's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Daniel stepped back like he had been pushed. My father sat down heavily in a chair, his face gray and tired. I could see the moment he realized he had believed the wrong person. Someone called the police. I didn't stop them. When the officers arrived, the party was already over. Children were taken inside. Adults stood in small groups, whispering. I handed over everything I had saved. The emails, the dates, the names. I answered questions again, but this time my voice didn't shake. Elaine cried. Daniel didn't. As the sun went down, I stood near the gate again, the same place where I had arrived hours earlier. My father came over and tried to speak, but I shook my head. I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I ever would be. I walked away from that house knowing one thing for sure. I had lost a family, but I had found my voice. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. I didn't leave the party feeling proud or victorious. I left feeling empty, like a room after everyone has gone home, and the noise still hangs in the air. The sky was turning dark as I walked away from the rented house, and my feet hurt, but I kept going.
I didn't want anyone to follow me.
I didn't want comfort or apologies. I wanted space to breathe and think. That night, I stayed in a small guest room at a friend's place on the edge of town. The room was simple, with one bed, a small lamp, and a window that looked out onto a quiet street. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept replaying my sister's frozen face, my father's shaking hands, and the sound of people whispering when the police arrived. I wondered how things had gone so wrong, and how they had stayed wrong for so long without me seeing it clearly. The days after the party were slow and heavy. I had to speak to the police again, this time not as someone accused, but as someone finally believed. I gave statements, answered questions, and handed over everything I had saved. It felt strange to be listened to after being ignored for so long. Every word I spoke felt like it mattered, and that scared me almost as much as being blamed had. My father called me one evening. His voice sounded older, tired in a way I had never heard before. He said he was sorry. He said he should have protected me. He didn't ask me to come home. I think he knew that house was no longer mine. I told him I needed time. That was the truth, even if it hurt him to hear it. Elaine didn't call. I heard from others that her life had fallen apart fast. Friends stopped answering her messages. Her work was under investigation. The money she thought would protect her had become the thing that exposed everything.
I didn't feel happy about it.
I just felt calm, like a storm had passed, leaving silence behind. With the little money I had left, a mix of pounds and a few saved dollars, I rented a tiny apartment in a quieter city. It had one room, a small kitchen, and a bathroom with a leaky sink. But it was mine. I bought secondhand furniture and cooked simple meals. At night, I sat by the window and wrote in my notebook, letting my thoughts come out slowly, honestly. I found work at a small office. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady. Every pound I earned felt different from before. It felt clean. I opened my own bank account, my name only, no shared history attached to it. Each time I checked the balance, I reminded myself that independence didn't come from big numbers. It came from control. Sometimes I thought about the kids. I missed them. I hoped they would grow up remembering the birthday cake and not the silence that followed. I hoped they would learn that truth matters, even when it's uncomfortable. I hoped one day they would understand why I spoke when I did. I didn't become close with my family again. Maybe I never will. But I stopped feeling like I needed their approval to exist. I learned that saying no doesn't make you cruel, and telling the truth doesn't make you dangerous. What hurts people most is being exposed, not being wronged. Now, when I tell my story, I do it without shaking. I do it in easy words, so no one can twist them. I say what happened, how it felt, and what it cost me. I say it because I know there are other women who have been blamed because they were quiet, pushed aside because they were convenient. I lost a house, a family name, and the life I thought I had. But I gained something better. I gained my voice, my strength, and the freedom to build a future that belongs only to me. And that, to me, is worth more than any number of dollars or pounds anyone could ever accuse me of stealing.